Welcome to Living University, where all the world is our campus.
If I told you that you as a parent have the ability to grow or shrink your child's brain, would you believe me? Life challenges can be brain boosters or brain beaters. This is an exciting topic because it gives us power and control over what happens in our brains and in the brains of our children. Often we do not have power over what challenges come our way, but we can control the way we respond to those challenges, and that is important to many aspects of our health. In today's lecture, we're going to cover 2 points. The first is why taking on challenges is an essential skill for our children. And the second is how we can teach our children to handle challenges in a healthy way as they grow and develop. So, diving right in, why is this an essential skill for our children to learn? Well, as alluded to just a moment ago, stress actually affects the growth of the human body, and the brain in particular. In your reading for this lesson, you're given a summary of what happens in the body when a challenge is presented that triggers the stress response in your system. The result is dilated pupils, accelerated breathing, a spike in blood pressure, increased heart rate, focused attention, reduced digestive function, and a dulled pain response. All of this is from a long chain of events happening throughout the major systems of the body. In small doses, the body handles stress situations efficiently, but over time, this can lead to things being unbalanced. And as your text points out, when adrenaline and cortisol shift resources in the body to accommodate for these new sudden responses, other systems have to be slowed or shut down. The systems that are neglected during this time are commonly those for growth and repair. This means physical growth and keeping sickness and disease out are not important functions during this time of physical stress responses. And this can lead to severe delays and problems for developing children if stressful situations are left unaddressed over a long period. Besides the growth in immune systems, during times of stress, the brain of young children can be affected as well. With brain development, just as other systems that are affected in the body, there are instances where challenges can help the brain function better, but overexposure is harmful here as well. First, I want to look at how challenges are helpful and even required for a healthy brain development. In John Rady's book, Spark, that you read a chapter from in Lesson 4, he addressed this apparent need for challenges and stimulation in Chapter 3. On page 61, he states, "What's gotten lost amid all this advice about how to reduce the stress of modern life is that challenges are what allow us to strive and grow and learn. The parallel on the cellular level is that stress sparks brain growth. Assuming that the stress is not too severe and that neurons are given time to recover, the connections become stronger and our mental machinery works better. Stress is not a matter of good or bad, it's a matter of necessity." On page 67, he continues, "It seems that, like stress itself, cortisol isn't simply good or bad. A little bit helps wire memories. Too much suppresses them, and overload can actually erode the connections between your neurons and destroy memories." In his last statement we just read there about what happens when there is an overload of stress on the growing brain segues into the adverse effects on the brain that I want to point out. Here I want to show you a quick clip from Harvard University's Center on the Developing Child. This clip will give you a better visual of what is going on more than I could do with just words.
Learning to deal with stress is an important part of healthy development. When experiencing stress, the stress response system is activated. The body and brain go on alert. There's an adrenaline rush, increased heart rate, and an increase in stress hormone levels. When the stress is relieved after a short time, or a young child receives support from caring adults, the stress response winds down and the body quickly returns to normal. In severe situations, such as ongoing abuse and neglect, where there is no caring adult to act as a buffer against the stress response stays activated. Even when there is no apparent physical harm, the extended absence of response from adults can activate the stress response system. Constant activation of the stress response overloads developing systems, with serious, lifelong consequences for the child. This is known as toxic stress. Over time, this results in a stress response system set permanently on high alert. In the areas of the brain dedicated to learning and reasoning, the neural connections that comprise brain architecture are weaker and fewer in number. Science shows that the prolonged activation of stress hormones in early childhood can actually reduce neural connections in these important areas of the brain at just the time when they should be growing new ones. Toxic stress can be avoided if we ensure that the environments in which children grow and develop are nurturing, stable, and engaging.
To conclude that video here is a statement from Jack Shonkoff, who's the director of the Center of the Developing Child there at Harvard. In another paper on the subject, he said, "This isn't just a hocus-pocus black box. It literally disrupts the brain architecture, and we can see it happening." So, what we have learned so far is, like most things in life, when it comes to challenges and stressors in our lives and the lives of our children, we all need a balance. As Dr. Rady said, when it comes to the brain and stress, a little bit helps with wiring, too much stunts it, and an overload wipes the wiring out. So, through this, we've established that it is important that our children face challenges, and it's just as important that we teach them how to take on them properly and support them in physical growth. Beyond normal physical growth and brain development, why else is it important that our children learn to take on challenges in life effectively? One thing that may seem obvious, but maybe you haven't really given a lot of thought to, is that challenges give opportunities to learn and grow. Challenges are real-life applications to lessons. Without challenges, our children will not have opportunities to stretch themselves. If they're not presented with situations that require them to think differently or behave differently, then they'll have no reason to change and mature. We can see examples of this in the way God treats us as His children. He expects growth and maturity spiritually. I'm sure you can think of situations in your own life where you know you've been presented with a challenge and God could have provided an easy door, but He did not. He leaves us to work some things out on our own. It's through that process of working through a challenge that we learn lessons that lead to maturity and allows us to handle the next challenge ahead. What better example is there to follow than God's? So we want to do the same for our children. Children need to be presented with challenges so that they can expand their knowledge and their confidence. As parents, we cannot do everything for them. Though we hate to see them struggle, it is sometimes the best thing we can do for them. Of course, there's a balance in this as well. We do not want to just throw them into the deep end and expect them to start swimming. We provide scaffolding for them as they grow and mature, so when the time comes to dive into that deep end, they've learned how to swim previously and have had some confidence that they can do it, even if they can't touch the bottom. That is where the effectively part of the statement comes into play. We do not want to just present challenges, but teach them how to deal with them effectively so that it's a positive experience from which new knowledge and maturity can emerge. Through this process, the child also builds confidence in himself and his abilities, so his attitude is right to take on the next thing that comes his way as well. The concept of building confidence and the right attitude brings us to the next reason to teach our children to take on challenges, and that is it encourages lifelong behaviors that lead to being successful. When your child is 3, I'm sure you have no idea what he wants to do when he's a teen or an adult. But no matter what he decides to do, you can influence how successful he will be at it starting when he's a toddler. That sounds a little bit heavy, doesn't it? But we know successful habits do not just happen when we become adults. They're built over time, starting when we're much younger. When I talk about confidence, I'm not talking about the worldly concept of blind self-confidence and self-esteem. The world teaches children that they can do anything and be anything that they want just because they are who they are. And this is really a silly concept that leads to a lack of confidence and a feeling of failure when the child begins to realize they cannot live up to those high, broad expectations. Children should have confidence in their abilities, but those confidence should be founded in something, not just vague ideas because someone else told them they could do it, but their confidence should be founded in past experiences that build that confidence. From challenges, children can learn several things that build up to a life of success. One is that when faced with a challenge, he's capable of figuring it out and working through it. Another is that he can rely on support systems, and in the early years, that's you as a parent, to help him through a challenge when he gets stuck. And if he needs advice or assistance, that you'll be there. Also, he learns that sometimes he will fail, and that's okay. He will see that there's always a lesson to be taken away from the experience that can be used in the future that may lead to success next time. And of course, through this process, we want to emphasize that God is where our abilities and strengths come from. And when we're doing things for the right reasons, to live a Christian life and glorify Him through that life, He is there to help and encourage us as well. So, we've discussed why we should teach our children to take on challenges in the right way, and it's important for physical growth and development, as well as mental maturity, and it sets them on the path to be successful in life. That was the easy part, right? Now for the harder part. How do we actually do this as parents? I'm going to start off with the easiest, most obvious step, one that we've alluded to several times already, and that is expose children to challenging situations. Do not shield them from struggles and challenges. An example that I immediately think of is something that I read years ago, and it seems like it may have been in some of your reading for this course as well previously. And that is the fact that for babies' brains to make certain connections, they have to go through the process of reaching for things. You may have seen a baby on a floor, able to pick up his head and move around a little bit, but not quite crawling yet. If there's a toy or something nearby, that the child will reach for it and squirm around trying to get to the object. That act is building important connections in the brain. If the parent continually moves the toy to the child and makes it easy for her to get to it, those connections have no need to grow, and they won't. In that situation, the parent has removed the challenge and therefore removed the importance for that growth. To learn to take on challenges effectively, the child has to have opportunities to face challenges. And when they do have challenges, we want to help them face them in a healthy way. What I mean by that is the child should not be thrown in over their head, like we talked about already with the swimming example. That type of situation leads to failure that the child could not control and leaves her feeling less confident and defeated. That's not healthy. To have a healthy outlook on taking on challenges, the child needs to feel in control of the circumstances that led to the failure, if there is one. If the child fails at meeting the challenge, but the cause was something she could control, then she can learn what to do differently and adapt for the next challenge. She still feels in control and confident she can do better next time. We foster this ability by scaffolding the situation around the child's challenge to make sure that they are equipped with whatever is necessary to work through the situation. Again, back to the swimming example. As parents, we would make sure that the child had basic knowledge and practice with keeping her head above the water, holding her breath, floating, and basic swim strokes and kicks before suggesting she try it where she cannot just stand up if she gets in trouble. The first few times we might also be in the water with her, so she has a safety net if she does fail. That is all part of helping our children take on challenges and learning from them. We provide the opportunities and the background experience and knowledge needed to face them. As a teacher, I've heard many parents say that they preferred that their child not be stressed out. And what they meant by that was that in the classroom, if he does not feel comfortable with the work, or if there has to do a role and he's not comfortable with it, then just don't make him do it. He'll do it when he thinks he's ready. And this is a very hands-off approach to teaching and parenting, and not a godly model at all. As we saw earlier in the lecture, overstressing a child does have great consequences, but we also learned that not stressing at all or having no challenges is also has its own consequences. Challenges are a part of normal adult life, and our teaching our children while they're young and their mistakes are not as costly is the time to teach them to deal with the challenges that they face. An example of what I mean by this is a situation that one of my teens faced this past summer. He needed to do some community service projects, and one that he was interested in required an interview. He was going to back down from the opportunity because he was nervous about doing the interview. I talked to him about it and put it to him in a way that explained why the challenge was worth the risk. The interviews are going to be part of his life soon, and he will have university interviews and job interviews in his future. At some point, he's going to have that first interview, and as a parent, I was looking at his future, and I would rather have his first one for a community service volunteer job where the possibilities of failure does not carry as big of a consequence as they will later when he's interviewing at a school he really wants to attend or a job that's important to him. This is part of teaching him to take on challenges. I helped him by talking him through what was expected and explained to him how this would benefit him in the future and the challenges that he would face, and then I pushed him to follow through with it. So we can teach our children how to handle challenges in a healthy way by preparing them mentally. We do this by providing opportunities and scaffolding the situations so they can have reasonable odds of success. What about physically preparing them? As we saw earlier in the lecture, stress takes quite a toll on our bodies. How can we help our children prepare their bodies for the toll that taking on challenges takes on them? Exercise is a good key. Here I will refer back to Dr. John Rady's book, Spark, because he explains what goes on in the body during times of exercise in relation to stress in a very plain language. On page 71, under the heading, That Which Doesn't Kill You, he writes, "It's well known that the way to build muscles is to break them down and let them rest. The same paradigm applies to nerve cells, which have to be built and repaired in recovery mechanisms activated by mild stress. The great thing about exercise is that it fires up the recovery process in our muscles and in our neurons. It leaves our bodies and minds stronger and more resilient, better able to handle future challenges, to think on our feet, and to adapt more easily. Regular aerobic activity calms the body so that it can handle more stress before the serious response involving heart rate and stress hormones kicks in. It raises the trigger point of the physical reaction. In the brain, the mild stress of exercise fortifies the infrastructure of our nerve cells by activating genes to produce certain proteins that protect the cells against damage and disease. So it also raises our neurons' stress threshold. So, just the act of getting some physical exercise during the day can help your child deal with and recover from taking on challenges. Of course, going along with exercise is good nutrition. Children need certain building blocks to build and maintain the body systems that are at work when dealing with stressors. We as parents can supply those building blocks through the food that we provide. I will not go into all the nutritional requirements for the different age of children right now in this lecture, but if you have children, or when you do, you should spend some time researching the nutritional needs at each age. If you've not yet taken the Nutrition 207 course, you may consider that as well. That course goes much more into what's going on in the body of children in regards to their nutritional health. Before taking that course, I had never consciously thought about the fact that we have different nutritional needs at different ages. In school, we were just taught the basic food pyramid, and it was good for everyone. Of course, it makes perfect sense that our nutritional needs change while our body and its needs is changing. But prior to that course, I had never really thought that far. Another LU class that's available is the Health 114 course. It also goes into the concepts of stress, eating healthy, and exercise, but more from an adult perspective. Though if we do not know how to take care of these things for ourselves, how can we teach our children to do so effectively? So that may be a course for you to look into as well if you have not done that yet. Well, now that I'm done with the plugs for other LU courses, That wraps up the lecture for this lesson. We covered why taking on challenges is an essential skill for our children and how we can teach our children to handle the challenges in a healthy way as they grow and they develop. Of course, there's a lot more detail in your reading for this week on these subjects as well. Have a great week as you can continue to explore this subject. I look forward to reading your post and discussing this more with you on the discussion forum.